Welcome back to my garden. It is the end of August, so we're going to show you basically what we're harvesting and what the garden is currently looking like. This trellis here is holding our succotash beans. Now the succotash beans, they are going to be dried beans, so I'm not worrying about picking them at all. I'm going to let them completely dry on the vine. And what's really cool is the plants have been growing up the trellis, and all of the beans are just dangling down. So it's really visually pretty and producing a ton of succotash beans. And I think this is a total of 5 beans that I put in the ground, and it's given me all of this. In here underneath the shade cloth that we have, I planted some Chinese cabbage and some radishes, French breakfast radishes. These were all sown for a fall harvest. So I planted them, I think, mid-July, and I have a soaker hose running through there so that the soil doesn't dry out. Because these crops prefer cooler weather, that's why I made it a point to keep the shade cloth here. So the Chinese cabbages are doing very well. The French breakfast radishes popped up and they're growing very well. In fact, I can probably harvest some radishes today. The French breakfast radishes, they're not super spicy like other radishes, and they're the only ones that we'll eat. What I like to do is I get them in the house, I wash them, I trim them, and then I put them in some ice water and store them in the fridge. The ice water tends to cool them down, so any lingering spiciness that might be in there is pretty much taken away. This cattle panel trellis, I have Good Mother Stallard beans. Again, another variety that I'm growing to dry and store. So I'm not picking them. I'm going to let them set and dry on the vine. So they are dangling, and this one's even more massive. But another reason why I really adore these cattle panel trellises is they give you a ton of height, they give you a lot of space to grow vertically and get more from your harvest, get more from your plants. And meanwhile, I can get a clear view into here and see where all the beans are, and having them hang down for a really easy harvest once they dry. So our tomatoes are continuing to do pretty well. The blight hit them hard this year. We've had some extreme heat waves. We're actually dealing with drought here in upstate New York. These plants have taken a lot, and yet they are still producing fruit. I've been trimming all of the diseased branches of the plants to try and prolong the life of them, and it's doing good. Another thing I've been doing is, as soon as a tomato starts to blush, so it just starts to turn red or pink, I'm picking it and I'm putting it in our kitchen to finish ripening. This kind of secures my harvest. I make sure that that tomato doesn't get sun scald, it doesn't get any diseases going, no bugs get to it. So I've been able to get a really good harvest of tomatoes by kind of following that trick and picking when they're just starting to blush. So this tomato is how I have been harvesting most of my tomatoes this summer. It's starting to blush. It's got some red, some pink. This one's good to go in a couple of days on our kitchen counter. It'll be a beautiful red. It has still a great taste to it. But the key is wait until it blushes. I'm not coming out picking green fruit because, to my knowledge, it's not going to ripen. Get it to blush first and then you're good to go. Down below these tomatoes, we had originally had garlic here. We harvested the garlic about the middle to end of July. So after that, I put beets in and some peas, some green beans, and some cucumbers to fill in the space. So I would get another harvest and get a fall harvest. So the peas are growing very well up the trellis I used for the tomatoes, and the beets are down below doing fabulously, actually growing better than my spring ones did. And then coming down, I got some more beans like dragon tongue beans and some blue lake beans. And behind them, I started some cucumbers. This is the first time I'm going to try getting another harvest of cucumbers before our first frost, which is typically early October. So the plants are growing very well, and I'll be interested to see if we're actually able to get more cucumbers and do more pickling before our frost comes in. This trellis is for our fresh eating cucumbers. These are Diva cucumbers. They're more disease resistant and they taste really, really good. There's a couple I think we have ready, and they are really doing well this year, even though I know we have some, like, there's a little bit of disease growing on them, and I think that's mostly due to the weather. So they're doing pretty well, but as you can see, you're getting really nice size fruit, and I'm getting a couple of these per week. I think I did 4 seeds on each side of the trellis, and so, you know, if I get, I'm saying probably getting 12 a week if you wait to get, you know, to this size. So they are producing quite well. This trellis is for the pickling cucumbers. I grew Calypso, and I want to say the Calypso cucumbers are by far my favorite now, even over the Boston pickling or the Chicago pickling. I am just super impressed about the disease resistance and the abundance of cucumbers they produce. I like to pick them smaller, like maybe like this size or just a little bit bigger. And I just like that size for our pickles. So most of the time I'll leave them whole, or at most maybe just cut in half. And they are so good and delicious. Right here is one of our many King of the North bell peppers, and they've been doing extremely well, producing a ton of fruit. If you remember at the beginning of the season, kind of beginning of July, all of our peppers had a significant nutrient deficiency, so I used CalMag solution, calcium magnesium, and I put it into the sprayer, and I did like a foliar feeding on the leaves, and they bounced back so well. Super green leaves, lots of blossoms, and now we're getting a ton of fruit. So I have another trellis over here, and this one's, I'd say, my craziest trellis of them all. I think I planted 10 Kentucky Wonder pole beans on one side and 10 rattlesnake pole beans on the other side. Needless to say, it went bananas. I am, though, getting lots of beans. I just have to look a lot harder. I have to go through a lot of leaves and a lot of vines to get to them. So I learned my lesson, and I won't be overpacking my trellises next year. But it produced, even though it went super wild, it produced. We're inside the crazy bean trellis. It literally is a jungle. I mean, I have the vines kind of hanging down like a wall. But, you know, still producing beans. So I'm pretty happy, and it looks pretty gnarly and pretty cool. So I like it. So in this corner of the garden, I have that teepee that the boys built, and I got 2 fabric bags. I've put in some peas for a fall harvest. So those went in about a month ago. And so they're slowly starting to trellis up. And this here is a scarlet runner bean. I started these probably end of May, and they basically took off. They're climbing up the elderberry. They're climbing all over the teepee. And they're really pretty. I've never grown them before. The bumblebees, the honeybees love them. There's guys here flying around. And they set some really big pods. I think if you pick runner beans when they're really like small and immature, I think you can eat them. But I think people typically tend to grow the scarlet runner beans because they're really pretty. but I can show you a pod. They're really big. These ones are dried. So I'm going to take them inside and I'm going to save this seed for next year. You know, I've never grown them, so I don't know what they look like, and they're actually really pretty. Wow, they're really, really pretty. So this is what a scarlet runner bean looks like. This is that hugelkultur area that we have the pine berries growing in, the white strawberries. And growing above them here, these are candy stripe zinnias. And all of the pollinators just adore them. These butterflies, bumblebees, they really do enjoy them. And the blossoms are just gorgeous. You get some really vibrant yellow and orange. You also get the really kind of like fuchsia and white color going on. So they just kind of grew up and above the pine berries. And I have at the front of the bed some different basils, like Chinese sweet basil, cinnamon basil, just some, you know, different types of herbs. So it's just really pretty. I don't harvest much, you know, other than really the basil sometimes for drying, and the pine berries when they produce. Back here, this is pretty much where we keep our greens. So I have the dazzling blue kale in the front, and then the ragged jack or the red Russian kale back here. I haven't had as much of an issue with those white moths laying the caterpillars on them this year. I think they're called cabbage loopers or cabbage worms, the little neon green ones. I've been spraying this with BT, and that's really been helping to keep any damage down. So we got some really good kale growing, and I have Swiss chard, and all of this I started in probably end of April, and they're still thriving. In the front, I put in some dill and some peas for a fall harvest because we harvested some beets out of there a couple months ago. And then I got some little tatsoi that I hear will continue to grow and produce even through the winter. So I'm gonna give that a shot and see if it really sticks true and will continue growing even after the snow starts to fly. All right, now we're in what we call the straw bed, and we have our sunflowers. This is the first time we've grown Mammoth Sunflowers, and for the most part, they all did really well. In particular, this one right here, the second one in, I think that's kind of the best head that we've been able to grow. This one, I believe, is 10.5 feet tall. That one's 11.5 feet tall, and it's actually unique. I think it's actually fasciated, meaning like multiple blossoms all put together. It doesn't appear to have one seed head, but it's hard to see from our angle because it's facing upwards. But I do believe it's more of like a fasciated sunflower, but I guess we'll see when we go and, you know, take it down. Now below the sunflowers, we have our pumpkin patch. I cleared out some of the leaves just because of squash bugs and powdery mildew, but it's still, you can see how massive the pumpkin patch has become. We have this really big pumpkin here. This was like one of the first ones to set, and it is massive. This one here is kind of like the warty kind of pumpkins. It's kind of gnarly looking. You know, it could be perfect for Halloween. And then I've got a couple other ones that are still growing. This is the butternut squash patch. This particular one is the Burpees Butterbush butternut squash. And what makes this one unique is the fact that it's more compact. There are 6 butternut squash plants in here, and this is probably, I don't know, a 10 by maybe 6 foot area where they've kind of sprawled through. I've already harvested 41 butternut squash, and it's the end of August, and there are at least another dozen out here still growing, if not more. So I highly recommend this one. It's doing super. This is the melon trellis. I have the lemon drop watermelon on this side, and I have the Minnesota midget melon on this side. Both are super fantastic, especially for us people living in the northern regions. We're in Zone 5B, upstate New York, and we have a very short growing season, 100 days, 120 days max. So to have watermelons and melons that actually mature here is awesome. The lemon drop watermelon is a yellow watermelon, and it's small. It's supposed to only weigh between 1 and 2 pounds. However, I think we harvested one and it was like 4, 5 pounds. So, not so personal sized, and it was amazing. One of the best watermelons I've ever had because it's a little different. It has like this citrusy flavor, not as super sweet as a red watermelon, but still sweet. So I really enjoyed it. It was something different. The kids had to get used to spitting out seeds. They're used to the seedless watermelons. The Minnesota midget basically produces like cantaloupes. They're like cantaloupe melons, but personal sized ones. And they are extremely sweet. I'm learning how and when to pick them. You basically want them to have like a webbed appearance, and you want them more tan than green. So think of like your cantaloupes in the market. They're basically tan. That is when they are good to go. And I've got a good dozen of those sitting on the vine right now. So we're patiently waiting for them to fully ripen. They're really good. This massive row here is our other patch of tomatillos. I have a small patch in the other garden. This is our massive patch. We grew the verde tomatillos and the amarilla, which are the yellow tomatillos. And I have been picking them like crazy. We are getting tons of tomatillos, making a lot of salsa verde and other canning other meals that require tomatillos because we have so many. It's like even with the Colorado potato beetle munching on them, they still keep thriving. So definitely a fan of these tomatillos. We have a row of tomatoes right behind the tomatillos. They are of course looking a little crazy because it's the end of August, and they're still setting fruit, they just don't look as pretty. Now behind the tomatoes, we have a whole bunch of bell peppers, hot peppers, sweet peppers, and just like the other peppers in the other garden, they were severely nutrient deficient. With that CalMag and a little bit of fish fertilizer, they basically bounced right back to life and are doing amazing. Mixed in with my peppers, you'll see that there's cosmos kind of growing up. They were total volunteers, and there was just no way I could rip that out. I just let them go wild in there. They bring in some awesome pollinators, and they just look so gorgeous, in the middle of all the green. So that's why there's cosmos just kind of popping up between the tomatoes and the peppers. Down this first row, most of those are just your bell peppers. And then this row and this row are more of your jalapenos and your hot peppers. I have Tam jalapenos. I also have Sugar Rush peach jalapenos in here, and they're all doing well. At the last row, I have some sweet banana peppers, and I've never grown those before, so I'm learning how to do like sweet pickled banana peppers and things like that, so that's been pretty fun. This monstrosity against the fence is a volunteer squash. I have no idea what kind it is. It's kind of cool. It looks like a pumpkin, but the skin looks really dark green, almost black with like orange specks. And then one thing over here looks like an acorn squash. So I don't really know if I have more than one squash plant potentially growing, but I'm just letting it do its thing. I totally hacked away at it yesterday, just like the other squash plants, due to squash bugs, powdery mildew. So it got an extreme haircut. That's why it looks even more gnarly. but it's really produced a lot of random either pumpkins or acorn squash or whatever it is. So I'm interested to see what it ends up being when we actually go and harvest. All right, so that's pretty much it. That's pretty much what the garden is producing right now, what we're harvesting. There's some other things here and there, but we'll have to show you in another video because there's just so much we could show. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you maybe took away some ideas from how we've put our gardens together, or maybe try some different things that you've never tried before. So thank you so much. Goodbye.
It's time to pick the veggies.
Cucumber beetle.
Did you get them?
No. This one I believe is 10.5 feet tall, and then dang goats. All the fun stuff that comes along with growing. Ooh, I touched the thing. Hang on. I don't know if that was gonna mess with like the. We got a squash bug on my pumpkin, and it's gonna die. Okay. Over here, that's got like the warty appearance, and there's a squash bug on that one. Ugh, little buggers.
On a stick.
Jalapeno on a stick.